Hello, YouTube. This is Pretty Casual Gaming. I'm here with Slanderman. Say hello, Slandy.
Hello.
And our first guest star, which would be Logix. Say hello, Logix. We have this week prepared the topic of MMOs. More specifically, I am the Final Fantasy XIV player. Slanderman, tell them what you play mainly.
World of Warcraft, mostly.
And Logix plays
Destiny 2.
And so our original idea was for the discussion of what to us defines an MMO. So I will let you two start with questions, really, because, well, specifically, Slenderman, what would you, like, just in a vague term, what would you define as an MMO?
An MMO for me is a game where a lot of people can basically gather and do activities together, from quests to dungeons to raids, like things that brings people together in an open world environment.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as what I would say.
So just an MMO is a amount of people, really.
Yeah.
I used to think of MMOs in that regard, but with how games are becoming now, in a way, everything's kind of just becoming an MMO light. Less so the open world, but most games are like you can play with tons of people. It's like every game you can now. So when I've like for me, my mindset, as bad as it sounds, is when I think of MMOs, I think of like WoW and FF, like that very keyboard and mouse centric, hot bar tab target kind of game. Whereas when I think of like Destiny 2, I think of it's an FPS or a looter shooter, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly FPS.
Yeah, I think nowadays it's if you look at like Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft, they are actually MMORPGs, where I would actually more like call Destiny for an MMO FPS instead.
Would you go Logix?
Sorry?
Would you go with that Logix?
Pretty much, yeah. It's mostly been an FPS game for the most time, and recently they've been, like the devs have been saying they want to move it more into the RPG sort of realm, I guess, and making the world evolve based on what the players as a community are doing. But it's mostly just like controlled by them, and it's based on the storyline. So
considering what you've both said, how you both consider them like big groups of people being able to do content together, how does that define Destiny? Because obviously I've played Destiny myself. I could never really get into the raiding scene because there's no decent way to look for like a raid group on console, which was obviously what I play on. And so all I had as really options was the PvP and the freeman content. Like, what is there any like large group content, or is it just the raid option? And then how do you even get into raids in Destiny 2?
Well, it's not large groups per se. It's I think groups of 6 is the maximum. You can get into them now through, they have like a guided games option where other players who know the raids well can like help you through them, like guide you through them, I guess. Or you can use like a looking for group type thing. But yeah, I think 6 players is the maximum at the moment, though I have heard that players have found a way to sort of glitch and get more players in than they should be able to, and the developers were kind of cool about it. They were like, "Oh yeah, you can play around with this for a while before we patch it." So, because they don't mind, like if the players find ways to exploit the game, they kind of just use that as a like they just watch what happens for a little bit and then patch it when they feel it's time.
So keeping on Destiny, whilst we're on that topic, is there like any content that you'd like where you can go in as more people, like some like large scale raids or like more large scale group up world content.
I don't think there is at the moment. Public events, I guess, on the planets. Any number of people can join those. Some of the recent seasonal stuff was sort of more geared around that as well. Like a few seasons ago, they had a public event type thing, like the Gambit game road.
Yeah.
They had basically taken the bank of that and the whole gathering motes thing out and put it as like a public event. So again, like massive amounts of players would just join up together and grind those as large groups on, just going around the planets doing them.
So onto your game, Sandy, World of Warcraft. What like larger content is there for you to do on that at the moment? Because there's a tower thing is all I know, but I don't actually know what it is.
At the moment we got like normal dungeons, which is 5 people. Then we got a raid as well, and then we got the Talker's Tower, which you can do 5 people as well.
So what is the Torghast Tower? For
Torghast,
like me, Logix, who doesn't know what that is.
Have you played any like Rogue light games before?
Probably, but I wouldn't know what you mean by rogue.
Where
what I mean.
Basically it is you go in there with your character and you collect powers, like something to enhance your abilities, and you basically lose those when the one is done, and your character is back to the normal way again.
I think Final Fantasy 14 has something a little like that with the Palace of the Dead, Heaven on High, which is content I don't particularly enjoy.
Yeah.
It's very repetitive in my eyes. Is that what Torghast is like?
Yeah, it is kind of repetitive. So what you basically go into Torghast for is basically to gather materials for your legendary powers, and that's it. So like I said earlier, that is basically the end game activities that's really pushing World of Warcraft at the moment. So
what is it? Sorry. You go first.
Do you get to know what the what your abilities get changed to before you go in, or is it like random?
It is random. When you kill an NPC who drops the power, you basically get a few choices to choose between. So, but apart from that, it is more or less RNG based. So you can have good ones with good powers, and you can have bad ones with very bad powers as well. So
I could see something like that being actually quite fun on Destiny, given how Destiny plays.
Yeah.
What do you think to that, Logix?
Yeah, that would actually probably be really good for like PvP, if they randomize things a little bit.
Yeah, because I've played that game's PvP, and it is the most unbalanced PvP I've ever played in my life.
Yeah, luckily, one of the new updates that's going to be coming is going to be focused on balancing it again. The dev team said they realise PvP is a huge part of the game, and they want to actually balance it finally. So they've heard our cries.
It only took them 2 games.
So things like stasis and whatnot will be significantly nerfed, and but PvP in that game is just terrible anyway, because it's mostly just who can get their super first and use it. It's not really there's no skill involved.
And who's got a shotgun or
handgun. and which Titan can hold W, eat crayons, and wield a shotgun.
It can do what?
Hold W, eat crayons. It's It's a running gag.
Okay. An in-house meme.
Yeah, it's pretty much when they just come like beelining straight for you with a shotgun in hand. There's usually no escape for it. You're just gonna die.
Do you have any questions in the same kind of topic for me about Final Fantasy 14, either of you? Because I know neither of you have got to end game on that yet.
Definitely not.
No. Well, how about you start with telling us about the in-game activities in Final Fantasy at the moment then?
Well, for Final Fantasy 14, the main focus of the way the game's built from bottom upwards is that, unlike most games where they focus on end game and then they just kind of scatter in stuff to do until end game, FF is built more on like the journey than the end game. So the end game, once you've reached level 80, there's a lot of catch-up mechanics now, which means that you can just get to the most recent kind of patch content. But like, had you been there at the start of an expansion, the way it works, would you first do obviously your dungeons and that lot, and then you get the tombstone gear, and then you do extreme trials, which is like 8-man content. It's substandardly easy. Like, it's hardcore to like the most casual kind of players, but it's like your entry level drug to hardcore content. And then you move on to Savage, which is, well, you've got your normal raid, you've got normal raids and alliance raids, and both of them are fairly easy. They're more for when you run them, you do them for story. And then you got Savage, which is like the actual more hardcore content, which currently we've got 12 of them this expansion, because they release them in tiers, and each tier has 4, and then there's 3 tiers throughout the expansion. But for people who've finished them, the big like aspirational content is Ultimate Raids, which again is 8-man content, and it's just nuts. Like, it's like 16-minute long fights, which doesn't really sound that much when you say it out loud, but like, with how hard the mechanics are, it's like if you mess up, you go back to the beginning. And these are mechanics that come quite swiftly one after another. So it's the way Final Fantasy 14 plays, it's less about like having the best gear or stuff like that. It's about learning a dance, in a way to say. Like, once you know the steps, it gets easier, but it's learning those steps. Like, that's the experience of the end game. It has other forms of content, like you got the PvP, but that's dead. You've got Gold Saucer, which is like just mini game stuff. It's nothing spectacular, but you know, it to some people that's what they like to do. Triple Triad and Mojang. You've got leveling, because you got like level all the different jobs. You can currently be 29 jobs on a single character. You've got, there's one more thing that I'm trying to wrap my brain for, but I'm forgetting, and it's about, oh, you got housing. A big part of the Final Fantasy 14 player base is the housing, which is player housing, where you can, as a single person or as like a group of people, which is known as a free company, you buy a plot of land, small, medium, or large, and then you build a house and you can decorate it. And like, obviously, I'm a role player, so I'm a content person first, but I role play as well. And for role players, it's obviously great, but surprisingly, like outside of RP, tons of people still use housing.
Nice. The housing you're talking about, like the decorations for it, do you get that from like doing side quests and dungeons and raids and so on as well, or how do you actually get things to put in your house?
Some of the most of the stuff, like a good 80% probably, is crafted. Usually crafters can build it from getting materials and stuff. but there is actually furniture which is like locked behind side story content. Some of it's, you do a dungeon and there's a chance of it to drop from dungeons. So there's different. One of the big ones is maps, which is another form of endgame content that I forgot to even mention, which is it's really easy content, but it's like you get a map, you go to a location, you open the chest, you fight a couple of mobs off, then you go back to the chest and open it again, and then it opens up and a bit of loot comes out. But then also a chance for a portal appears, and the portal you basically go in and then you clear some mobs and then you open a chest. And then you get like there's two different forms. There's one where you like pick a door, like there's two doors, and then it's like a chance to fail or a chance to open. And you move, if you opens, you move on to the next room, and repeat. Whereas if you get the wrong door, it kicks you out. And then there's another one which is like a big roulette, and which can also kick you out. But
Okay, nice. I have been playing Lord of the Rings Online. They got a housing system as well, which kind of sounds like what you are describing as well.
which game's that?
Lord of the Rings Online. They have both for their fellowships, which are like guilds in the game, and then they also got a solo player housing as well at the site. So it sounds pretty much the same in some places. So
I've definitely noticed it's more of an RPG MMO type thing, because obviously you don't have it in Destiny.
yeah,
Would be cool actually, considering that, like a little spaceship or something. Like I know you obviously get your spaceship you fly around in, but a little home-based spaceship for clans would be cool in Destiny, I think.
I think it would also be a cool thing to have in World of Warcraft as well for players.
Oh, right, yeah, you don't have it, do you? You had the garrisons, which was a complete disaster.
Yeah, let's not talk about the garrison, please.
What would you think for housing in Destiny Logix as our prime expert?
I don't know if it would work. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one because they are, like I said, they are trying to move towards more of an RPG, like MMO RPG style game. But there's not really a destination where you could go that would allow for building. And obviously, the way the worlds are instant, you would have to have like how the lost sectors are sort of solo instances. When you go into them, you would probably have to have something like that. I'm not sure, like how you wouldn't be able to really have other players come and visit. I don't think, unless you invited them into your team. I guess it wouldn't be the same as in like Final Fantasy, where I guess anyone could just come along and say hello.
Yeah.
In your house.
I think a big thing as well with Destiny is obviously with it being a first-person shooter, a lot of the people who play it are in it more for like action-based thrill gameplay, like that kind of slow life kind of drip probably wouldn't interest people that much in that game.
I guess, yeah. I mean, we're getting kind of a slow drip of content at the moment, but that's just how the seasonal stuff works in between the major DLCs.
So on the subject of like content drip, FF14 has a patch coming in 2 weeks, which is the 5.5 patch, and then like in a couple of months we'll get the 5.5.5 patch. And usually the way FF releases content, COVID notwithstanding, is they usually like every few months they release a patch, and it's got a very repetitive kind of release schedule. But for a lot of the player base, it's like they know at least what they're gonna get, and like that's one thing that really makes them happy. Like in a 0.0, 0.2, and 0.4 patch, you're gonna get the normal raid, the savage. You're probably gonna get a dungeon. Trials, I think, come out as well sometimes. And then like in a 0.1, 0.3, and 0.5 patch, you get your alliance raids and stuff like that. You also get trials, and each of the patches obviously gives us more MSQ. There's other little things like new recipes and stuff for crafters, and little side bits of content and adventure missions or something like that. I forget what it's called. Exploratory missions, which is Eureka and Bozja, which is the newest kind of content, which is big, grindy, kind of keep you invested for a while content. So on that note, like, how does Destiny 2 and WoW handle its releases? We'll start with Logix. But like, how does it handle its updates? Like, does it just randomly release stuff? Has it got like a schedule or a mode wrap? Or
They have a schedule, yeah. We know what's coming well ahead of time. So I think every year they plan to have a major DLC release, which would obviously be like a butt ton of content and like new storyline type stuff. And then in between those, we have seasonal releases, which I'm not sure exactly what the time span on those are because it seems to be variable at the moment because of COVID. But you'll get like a season, you'll have several months to play through it, and it tells you like exactly how many days are left. They've recently added they've added a season pass as well, which is just sort of an optional thing that you can use to get more resources from leveling up. And usually, like the seasons will come with storyline content. They will come with new like weapons and armor and things to the game, almost guaranteed every time. Sometimes you get strikes or raids or dungeons will be added with them as well. I think that covers just about all of it as far as I can remember.
and then obviously I'm a former WoW player, so I know like vaguely how they handle stuff. But as someone who still plays Slender, how do WoW handle the updates these days?
I would say they are pretty. They don't release too much info about it before they actually go into release the PTR servers, which then people can delve into if they want, or wait for it to drop. We just got to know that 9.1 is coming soon, but we don't know actually when or how long before it will actually hit the PTR. So we are a bit clouded. We don't know too much about the coming major patches. But apart from that, we do know they have like a planned schedule that goes over the expansions or so. They don't just give out information about it. They are like keeping us a bit in the shadows at times. So the only thing we know about 9.1 is that we will get a new raid, a new mega dungeon, and I think they said that tires sets will also return, where like each class they will get a bonus set for the upcoming raid. So but apart from that, we basically don't know what is going on.
For Square, they have the obviously the quite reliable release schedule, which most of the player base can kind of guess. But one of the big things that's really good about Square is they do letters from the producer live, which they usually do it's usually a couple of weeks beforehand. But like they give you like a rundown of what's going to come out, and most of it like, oh yeah, we guessed this. But sometimes obviously they had the random content that you're not expecting.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the same here, but I feel like we have been kept in the shadows a bit more compared to Final Fantasy, unless they announce a big expansion. That is probably something we will hear in 2 years or so. But like for the major patches, they are like keeping it a bit back until they actually have something to show off on the PTR servers or so on, before players are getting some news about it. Unless they're holding a big game conference like they did with the BlizzCon online. They did in February, I believe, which we got a little info about 9.1. So
You mentioned PTRs, that's the public test,
yeah,
right? Do you have that for Destiny, Logix? Because we don't have that for 14. Like,
no, I don't think so. I don't think we have one. Not that I know of, anyway. But that was actually something that I was just going to mention as well. So how does that work with the with like new content? Do they put that on the PTR or before release, or do they wait until they've released? Because obviously it's for testing, so you would imagine.
Yeah. How they worked in the past, at least, is like they put the stuff out on the PTR. They keep updating it until the major features from that patch is like working together, and when everything is slowly starting to build up and it feels like it's 100% running, and then they release it on the live servers more or less.
So you get kind of a snapshot preview of what's to come.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is kind of how it works, more or less.
even on Logic's question, does that mean like how much of it like do they release on the PTR? Because even when I was playing, I never actually went on the PTRs, so I'm curious as to how it actually works. Like, because if they give you all the content, surely when you can just finish the patch before it even comes out, and it's like, why even play the game?
I think apart from some of the end bosses of each raid, they are not going to release in the PTR, but everything from class changes to some of the raid bosses coming in the patch and the dungeons as well, they have been a part of the PTR. So basically, like you said, you could go in there and test out each boss and basically complete most of it on the PTR. But I don't think they actually like the Mystic rating difficulty. I don't think they have that on the PTR. That is like being kept for itself for the live servers.
Well, at least they leave something for the actual game, right?
Yeah. I know with the last few expansions and patches, they actually have like excluded the last boss. Like that is the only thing people actually can go in and see what is going on with 100%. Even the game has like a dungeon manual. You can see which bosses is on the list and so on. And every time on the PTR, the last boss is just a big sign with a name. And the same with his abilities, they are just signs, question marks. So
just a big sign saying "insert boss here."
Yeah.
Question mark boss.
Yep. So
do you feel that the PTR gives people an unfair advantage, like to figure out how things work before going live?
No, I actually don't think so. Or at least I haven't felt so. When I have looked at the major guilds doing some hardcore raiding and so on, they are like at the toes, every one of them. So right behind each other. So yeah, I don't think they're getting a big advantage or each other. That's my personal feeling, at least. So
one of the big things for Final Fantasy is in the end game content. More on about the community here is with the ultimate raiding scene more specifically than the Savage, but I think it happens in Savage as well. there's a big world's first race to
Yeah.
clear content. Is that the case with WoW and Destiny? Like, do they have these big groups that everyone knows who they are, and they're always like in this race?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
We have an upcoming. I think there's an upcoming raid that's going to be added, or a dungeon, and there's going to be. They said they're going to do a raid race, so I suppose it is a raid. And they've done like unofficial ones before, but this one's going to be official. And there are obviously like, you know, huge key players on YouTube and Twitch who play the game, and like do all the end game content, sometimes solo even, and yeah, they're just broken, honestly. But yeah, they will be doing raid races. I guess more often from now on.
Yeah, I mean, the raid racing has been a big part for the last few expansions, at least, in WoW. And I know some of the major guilds, they started streaming it from the for the entire teams as well, so people around the world could catch it on Twitch or YouTube and so on. And I know some of the bigger like the officials sites like Rowhead, Icy Veins, and all those sites where you basically go into for your World of Warcraft news. They actually keep tabs on what is happening with the World First race going on with each major patch. And I also know that there is also at times going some tournaments on with Mystic Plus dungeons as well. How that actually works, I'm not completely sure. So yeah.
I know one of the big things for WoW is not just its raiding scene, but its PvP scene actually has a really big following, and
yeah, it does
and stuff. So with Final Fantasy, there is no PvP scene like whatsoever. You have a few smallish discords which try to arrange PvP and a lot, and you have like the Feast, which has its top 100 and stuff like that, but like it's not a big part of the game's community. So what I'm curious about is on Destiny Logix, what is the PvP community like there? Is it just something people do for fun, or is there actually like a serious scene to it?
It's that's a mixed bag, I guess. You can do it for fun. You can also do it as a really good way of leveling up quickly, getting really good gear. They have now like more elite versions of it, I guess. Like they have like Iron Banner comes around every now and then, which is a little bit more sort of try hard, and then they have Trials of Osiris, which is like the really like top level PvP stuff, where you can get end game weapons and armor. I haven't tried it personally because, well, it's top level stuff. Like everyone's trying as hard as they can. It's yeah, I think that's yeah.
But is there like a big is there tournaments or like
Tournaments? Well, I guess Iron Banner kind of counts as one to an extent. There isn't really any sort of big community goals for them though. Although I suppose no, I was going to say Guardian Games would probably be one because that's more based around the whole community, but that's not PvP. That's sort of working in small teams against regular enemies.
So one of the big questions I have is how gearing works in both the other games, because Final Fantasy 14 is a very standard, easy to figure out kind of straight line of how gear works. You hit level 80, you get given the level 80 artifact gear, which is fairly weak. You do dungeons, you get tombstones to get the next piece of gear. then you do your normal raids, and then then it's alliance raids you do for these coins to upgrade the tombstone gear you got back here, which then surpasses the dungeon gear. Then you got your savage raid, which then with the augmented tombstone gear and the savage gear, you make your BIS, and that's pretty much it. Like that, it's just a straight line kind of. The bigger content you do, the better your gear gets, and that's it. There's catch-up gear, and there's like other ways to get the gear, but it all leads to a progression system, which is just a straight line of power and level. Like there's not like unique special abilities that armor gives you, whereas I know in both WoW and Destiny there is like armors that give you unique abilities and stuff like that. So how, starting with Logix, how does the progression for gear work in Destiny 2?
You have, well, I suppose you already know this, but for the viewers who don't, you have like a power level, which is just your overall sort of power, I guess, your overall ability to withstand enemies and damage enemies. Obviously, if there's an enemy that's like significantly higher power level than you, then you can't deal damage to it. And you have obviously random drops of loot whenever you're killing enemies or doing quests and things. And they will have like various rarities. The exotic armors are the highest rarity, which obviously give you the ones that you're talking about, I suppose, that give you special abilities, things like that. So yeah, it's you kind of just you get the seasonal armor usually, which is a legendary set, and you will try to level it up, but you'll want to have like one piece of armor that is exotic, because you can only have one at a time, obviously, to stop you from being like broken, overpowered. And you can infuse higher level armor into your current ones, which will destroy the higher level piece and sort of put its power level into the current armor's power level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Same with weapons, pretty much. And then, of course, you can upgrade them further through masterworking, which just increases all of the stats.
So is there like for like the big end game people, is it just a matter of get the powerfulest gear you possibly can, or is there like a best in slot for all?
There's people who know more than me about what they're doing, or who like stat nerds, will grind for very specific roles of their armor. They will want to try to get things that have whatever it is they're looking for, so like defense or intellect or whatever. And they have what they would consider to be god roles. And they would farm like various events or quests or whatnot to try to get them, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. So they'd have like a specific exotic with specific weapons and armor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, which exotics you use will, like, you can obviously create character builds. The one that I currently have is, there's a new exotic that came out recently, a chest piece for the warlocks, which makes it so when you kill enemies, you charge up your super a little bit. You can combine that with certain weapons that have like specific perks, like Thresh, which is a new perk they added. Which also charges your super a little bit. And so I think you can see where that's going. If you combine those two things with some, you can also put mods on the armor. There's mods that increase the amount of super energy you get from these kills. And yeah, so basically I can charge my super in about 25 seconds or so. It's kind of broken. Some people will try to go for those, I guess, and it's all, whenever a new season comes out and new exotics come out, people will look for new builds. They can create new broken combinations that will just make the game so much easier.
Did you have a question, Sandy? I heard you tried to.
He basically answered it. I was about to ask if it was like Diablo, because there you basically got a lot of different items with special powers attached to that item. for different classes and so on as well. But
I think the main difference between Diablo and Destiny is there's a limit to your power in Destiny. There's only I think it's that you can have one exotic weapon and one exotic armor, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's correct. That's
Yeah,
what I meant, to stop people from being like stupidly OP. Obviously, you don't want to have like 2
Yeah,
exotic weapons
yeah.
or 3.
of course.
Yeah,
It'll
in
just be-
Diablo it does
because
not.
because those exotics they're very powerful.
Yeah, but my thought progress was that the items is basically not completely the same, but you want to have the best stats on your chest piece as possible, and yeah, on your legs, feet, or gloves or helmet you have in the games to actually max out that build you're trying to get.
Yeah, it's also obviously going to be based on what class you're playing as.
Yeah.
There are 3 classes in the game: Warlock, Hunter, and Titan. Obviously, what you consider to be good stats, or the ones that you want to have the highest on the armor, are going to be dependent on that as well. So
Yeah.
if you're playing a Warlock, you don't care as much about the like recovery stats or defense necessarily,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're practically tanks. So you would probably go towards like things that will increase your or decrease your ability cooldowns, or decrease the time it takes to charge your super up, or things like that.
Yep.
So tell us about WoW, Gary and Sandy, because last time I actually played WoW on such a serious level that I took a notice of gearing was back in Mists of Pandaria, which back then you had gear sets, and I believe they removed them from the game. So how does
Yep.
gear work now?
At the moment, all gear is around same level. If you do a certain content, you can basically put it up to like the max level in that activity. Like if you do PvP, you can basically get around the same power level as a PvE person doing raids and so on. And the same with mystics as well. So
just explain what Mythic is to Logix, because I don't think he actually knows what Mythic is.
A mythic is like a 5-man dungeon on the really hardest difficulty. And the level difference in the mythic can go from 1 to 15, and actually also above, but it is like the enemies just gets more health and hits harder and so on. It depends on the mystic level as well. There's some different weekly buffs the dungeons get as well. Like
we have something very similar in Destiny too.
Yeah. Like last week there was like each time an NPC hit the tanks, they actually get a debuff, which would decrease the healing received. So basically, the tanks had to do a lot of kiting as well while tanking to make sure they didn't get the debuff stacked up. That was just one of the what is called the FXs the game has. So there is a few different ones. So and they change each week. So, yeah. So but to the gear part, at the moment they actually changed the Mystic Plus gearing a bit. Before it was like the Mystic scene was a lot RNG dependent. You didn't get loot from each boss. It was at the end, like at the chest, you basically get one item which normally would drop from all of the bosses in that dungeon. So it was a lot of RNG, and people was actually getting frustrated that they didn't get an item they spent 30 minutes to try. So they changed the gearing system a bit while. So if you get an item and you can see what level it is, then you can go back to an NPC and you can actually upgrade that item to get it better. Before you basically had to make sure you kept on doing the hardest difficulty to like a Mystic 12 plus to actually get the best item from that dungeon. Now they can basically just say, okay, I know this dungeon drops this item, I can just spam it a lot in Mystic Plus 1, and then they can slowly upgrade it with a currency they also get from clearing the dungeons. So, and in the raid part, it is like the harder the difficulty, the better raiding gear you get, and there is no like tire sets like Noobcake mentioned earlier. So you basically just get a normal piece with some strains and some crit and some haste, and that's it at the moment. So, but like I said, in 9.1 they actually want to bring back the tire sets as well again. So, yeah. So that is how the gearing is in World of Warcraft at the moment.
So on Destiny 2 and World of Warcraft, what is side content like? Because obviously both World of Warcraft is such a big raiding and PvP scene, but like, what is there to do outside of that? And obviously the same question goes to you, Logix, afterwards.
At the moment there's like daily quests appearing around on the map, which give you some anima which you can use to empower your covenant. At the moment, Shadowlands is divided into 4 regions, which a faction basically looks over that region. And when you reach max level, you actually have to choose a faction you want to stay in on your character. And with that, you get some special region bonuses, which you can use your anima to improve in your faction, like getting more portals around the entire region and unlocking bonuses, bonus daily quests, and also a weekly covenant function as well, which for my character, which is my demon hunter at the moment, I am night phase. So basically what my weekly covenant is that I can plant some seeds which will help me to revive dead guards from the normal world. So I have to take care of them to make sure they get out in the real world again afterwards. And then you get some items all the way from crafting materials to some gold, some extra mounts and stuff to do to get from that. And like there have been in all the past expansions, there is a lot of mount farming going on from the old content you can still farm, and the battle pit system is there as well, which is World of Warcraft in Pokemon style. So how that basically works is if you find a small creature in the world, you can basically go out and fight it, and then you can use that pit for your own battles as well against other players if you want, Yeah, they also introduced a few battle pit dungeons as well, which is basically like, let's say if you like play a Pokemon game and you need that water badge, that is basically how the dungeon system works. So with some like it is easier to get new battle pits through that way. So yeah.
So what side content is there in Destiny outside of raiding and
Plus, like, there is the obviously the raids and the dungeons and things, various PvP or PvPvE game modes. Aside from those, obviously it's open world, so you can just go to any of the planets, any of the destinations, and there will be public events happening every now and then, which are just like randomly dotted around the map, and sometimes it'll be a randomly picked event as well, that people can just sort of take part in if they want to, if you have a passing interest or whatever. There's heroic versions of those that you can do if you know the secrets of the game, I guess. If you know how to make the event heroic, you can make it a little bit tougher for more rewards. Patrols, which are just like mini side quests, I guess. You just pick up a patrol. It'll say something like, I don't know, kill 16 enemies of a specific type or something. You do that, you get your rewards. There's a lot of bounties that you can pick up from NPCs, which are what people, I think, spend most of their time doing. You've got weekly bounties and daily bounties. Obviously, the weekly ones take longer, are tougher, but they give you much more rewards. Strikes, the Vanguard strikes, which are sort of replays of story missions or missions like sometimes they might just be added in like as sort of optional things. Those are kind of what I meant when I said Destiny also has the same thing you were talking about, Slanderman, where we've got like a Nightfall version of the strike. It's basically just a much tougher version. You have different difficulties going all the way up from like I think Adept, Hero, Legendary, something like that, Master, and then there's like a Grandmaster mode, of which the description text is literally just "good luck" in red text. So it's ridiculous, and each one obviously as you go up has a higher power level requirement and has like stacking modifiers that will, you know, like various modifiers like match game, for example, which would mean you would have to shoot enemies' shields with a weapon that has the same type, like the same element, things like that. They've recently added, I don't know how recently, it was several seasons ago. Probably you haven't seen them, Noobcake. I don't think the new modifiers they have like special ones, Unstoppable, Anti-Barrier, and Overload. And these are basically like new. You get champion enemies that are. They have one of these modifiers, like it'll be like an Overload champion or a Barrier champion, and you have to have a weapon equipped that has a mod on it that will, like if it's a Barrier champion, you'll want Anti-Barrier or something. Somebody in your team will have to have like, you know, a weapon or multiple weapons to deal with those. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck. And the Nightfalls are full of them. So obviously, it's a good idea to look at the mods before you go in, figure out what you need. So I guess like Anti-Barrier champion, for example, it will barrier up and then heal itself back up to full health. Every now and then, this barrier is invulnerable to anything except anti-barrier rounds, if that makes sense. So we have things like the Nightfalls. There used to be a lot more side content, like there was the Menagerie, there was the Leviathan, which were like almost raid level stuff that you would need a massive group of people who were all coordinated to do. But those got removed recently because obviously they're like lowering the amount of content in the game to make space for the new stuff, because they've filled it to the point where they can't add anymore. So they had to start removing things. Yeah, I guess Gambit, it's a sort of side thing you can do optionally. It's PvPvE. And Lost Sectors, which are just sort of in the open world. You can just go in and you'd have to like clear out an area. It's instanced. You'd have to clear out an area, defeat the boss. I think that's all of the optional content, really, for the most part. Yeah. And then obviously anything the current season adds in, because obviously we're on a seasonal sort of rotation. They like to add in something new each time to keep things fresh. So this season we have Battlegrounds, which is kind of like a strike, I guess. You sort of load into an instance thing with a randomly matched team, or a fire team if you want to group up with people specifically. And you would just fight through endless hordes of really tough enemies, and then there would be like a champion boss at the end. Yeah, that's about it, really.
So for 14, one of its big things is its side content. Obviously, I've mentioned maps. I've mentioned the minigames Cold Saucer. I've mentioned your raiding scene and that lot. On top of that, you have Blue Mage currently, which is a limited job, which it basically you still can do all like the PvE stuff to a certain level. But like one of the big things for the job is more that you have to go and like collect the spells from certain enemies and stuff. Like you start with one spell and you actually have to go learn it by seeing a enemy use it, and then you get it, and then you can swap out spells and build the job how you want, and then obviously you do all raids and stuff. A big thing for 14 is side quests. It's got a lot of storylines that are like as important or as big or as like well written as the main story, because the main story is the big thing that most people, you come in and you do that to get to the end. But like a big example is there's a questline called Hildebrand, which is very like comedy kind of storytelling. Like it's very suspension of disbelief, and it's really proper like anime silly kind of content, but like it's one of the best well received pieces in the game. And then on top of like these side stories, you also have Fates, which is kind of like the public events and stuff from Destiny, or like your world quests, or like joint world quests on World of Warcraft. I've said maps, I said God Saucer. You have Beast Tribes, which is like that's more like your daily quest. Like you have to repeatedly do a few quests a day, and then you build up these Beast Tribes, and you get rewards from that. You have people who like mount collect. You have the minion collections, orchestrion collecting. You got Triple Triad, which is a card game inside the game, which a lot of people go collect for that. Title farms, Lev quests, which no one ever uses anymore. And then one of the big things for Final Fantasy 14 is crafting and gathering, which I know in WoW, I don't know if it's changed since I played it, but in WoW it's just you get the materials and then you click a button and you craft it. Whereas in FF it's almost like playing one of the battle classes. Like it has its own rotation and its gear sets and building stats to make sure you high quality crafting, and then you have expert crafting, which I'm not an expert in, ironically. I haven't done that yet, but that's like really hard crafting that you need like proper knowledge of crafting to do. You have your collectibles, your collectible weekly turn-ins. Like there's a lot of like content for crafting and gathering, and they treat them as if they are like the battle classes. Like it's not just a tiny piece of side content to push to the side once you're done with it. Like there was like a serious crafter scene. One of the things I was curious about is there like a crafting system in Destiny 2 at all?
There's not really a crafting system. There's armor infusion that I mentioned earlier, where you can, destroy armor. They're planning on adding transmog. That's about the closest thing I can think of, which isn't really crafting. But they're going to add like more character customization stuff. That's really about it. There's no crafting. There are materials that you will collect. Obviously, like legendary shards, enhancement cores, things like that. But so I guess gathering maybe, but not crafting now.
So outside of Destiny 2 for you, Logix, and obviously World of Warcraft for you, Slandy, and Lord of the Rings, as you mentioned, is there any other MMOs that you've played in your lifetime of playing MMOs?
RuneScape, obviously, the big one. I don't know. Does Division 2 count as an MMO? Or the Division rather? Because I don't really think the Division specific.
I think Division 2 is actually pretty much like Destiny 2 as well, because they have raids for I think it's 8 people, where they basically gather to get a special set piece or so. And then there is like the missions, which you basically can call a dungeon, which you can solo, but you can also group up for the higher difficulties. So
yeah, things like the I forget what it's called, that tower thing they've added in Division 2.
Yeah.
The summit. That's
the summit. That is also a group content in the game. So
I think this leans back kind of on what I was saying earlier about how a lot of games are very much becoming MMO lights.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see people wandering around sometimes doing things, but it's not very often you actually come across other players in it. But it is also open world.
Yeah.
I don't really know if open world it's the same thing though. It's.
But I think, like Noobcake is saying, most games are going for an MMO style game, because what MMO basically means in the end is massive multiplayer online. And a lot of multiplayer games nowadays is actually going into that category in the end, with massive open worlds, online stuff going on in them.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I asked. Like Division 2 is massive open world, and you'll see like groups of players doing things. And, there are public activities going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of different activities in the open world which you can join with other players, and there's also the entire PvP area, which is called the Dark Zone in Division 2, where you can go in, fight NPCs, while other players are also there. And the fun thing with Dark Zone in Division 2 is everyone is friendly until the extraction in the Dark Zone, which basically means the items you gathered from the NPCs you kill, you have to extract them out of the zone by a helicopter, and it takes like 2 minutes or so when you are ready to call in the helicopter. And at that moment, when you're going to for the extraction, everyone can be your enemy in the game.
I mean, they can be your enemy at any point, but there seems to always be when you're extracting.
Yeah, because if they kill you, they can then pick up the items, and then they can extract it instead. And the people who actually attacks others, they get then marked for like, I'm not actually sure for how long, but they get an get they're going to be rogue agents, and everyone in the Dark Zone area then can see that person running around, and then it's a hunt for them, more or less. And then there's also like normal capture the flag and deathmatch type PvP activities in the game as well. So I also have played a bit of Star Wars: The Old Republic as well, which is, to be fair, it is a Warcraft, World of Warcraft clone as well, more or less. So they have the PvP scene, they got the raiding as well, and the dungeons as well. So pretty much the same, just in another universe.
For me, I played RuneScape, like Logix. That was actually the first MMO I ever played. And then I've played some back in the day that were like really unknown ones, like they were like almost like Maid Marian or Sherwood Forest or something like that, and it was like really unknown, like really low.
Yeah.
Like you could tell it was low budget as well, but like it was so much fun. It was such. I never really got far in any of them, but like I played a lot of like random unknown titles. I played Final Fantasy 11 when that came out. I've played Adventure Quest, I think was one.
Yeah, I tried that as well. Adventure Quest 3D, I think it's called.
I've played World of Warcraft, obviously. That was a big one of my life for ages. I played SO for a little bit. And then 14, obviously, is the obvious one.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any others that I'd call an MMO that I've played. Not really, no.
I mean, for me, EVE Online is another one actually that I hadn't thought of. That's pretty much an MMO, like a space.
Yeah,
MMO
EVE
thing.
Online.
Yeah.
I know the developers and other people as well, they're even calling Ark Survival for an MMO as well.
It's a survival game, it's not an MMO.
No,
I guess survival games in a way are MMOs these days, so.
Yeah.
It goes back to that thing that we said right at the very beginning of like what even defines an MMO anymore. Like,
yeah. Like I said, I think most people are forgetting nowadays is that MMOs it is a massive genre, because World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy it goes into MMORPGs. If you that's their specific location, more or less. And like with Ark Survival, they are calling it an MMO because it's a massive multiplayer server, which is online all the time. So, and like with Destiny 2 and Division 2, both of them are MMOs as well because they are running on a massively open server where people can join in and join out every time. And both all of the games have some kind of guild function in it. I know Ark has the tribe function on the servers. So I think it's, if you look at games today, MMOs is a big category for MMORPGs, MMO action adventure games, probably in that sense. So
I think going on the definition of what do we class as an MMO, if we start classing in things like Division, that like you could really say like Monster Hunter World is an MMO. Like
yeah,
it really just expands the door to like so many games. So I think if we use that definition, we're going to be here listing games forever.
Yeah. So I think it's a good thing to think about. Are we talking about MMOs or are we talking about MMORPGs? Because if you look at a simple MMO game, let's say we go onto Steam and we search MMO, I'm sure.
That's like a disastrous idea.
Yeah, precisely, because there is a ton of games which have a massive world. It's open. It's all the games content is in an online server nowadays, and people can join together doing stuff together as well, like dungeons, quests, kill some NPCs, stuff each other, and so I think it's good to think if it is just an MMO or is it an MMORPG or MMO FPS game or whatever we are talking about in that sense.
Well, we're coming near to when we should really end, so I have one more question I'd like to ask both of you, and that's if your game could have one thing added into it from like any other game, like it doesn't have to be an MMO, like any type of game you've played, what would you want for your game? We'll start with Logix.
I think actually, like you asked earlier, a crafting system probably would be pretty nice. A way to like, craft specific gear. I guess it wouldn't be like really good or anything because that would just be too easy. There is kind of a similar thing already. They've added a way you can focus engrams to sort of focus what the drop will be a little bit more. So you can say like, I want a weapon, or I want, if you want to invest more materials in it, I want an SMG or something. You can do that. But yeah, I think a crafting system of some description would be pretty nice. Or yeah.
So what would you want for World of Warcraft, Sandy?
A housing system, honestly. I feel the game got a lot of good activities going on at the side, apart from waiting, but there isn't like something you can call your own in the game. They basically tried that with the garrisons, which I don't want to talk about. but yeah, the game needs something you can call your own, and a lot of MMOs, RPGs at the moment actually have that. From what I tried, I know Star Wars, the Old Republic, they basically have it. Final Fantasy have it. A lot of Rings Online have it.
So has it.
Yeah. So it's yeah. I think that would be a good thing to add to road, so the players themselves have something they can say, that is my house, that is where my character lives, and etc. Instead of just living in a big world, adventuring, your character basically have the character, so it doesn't have a home to stay at, so.
I think for mine, it would have to be the collection book system from World of Warcraft, which obviously as you go through the game, once you've like, all you have to do is have looted something once, and then it's like saved.
Yeah.
And you can use that thing as an image for like transmog in future.
Yeah.
But like the collection book also like kind of hints to you where you want to go to get that certain armor. And I think for Final Fantasy, I'd love that. Not just for armor, but like mounts, minions, like just we've seen it added recently with Triple Triad, which is the card game I was on about. Like they can kind of give you an indication of how much you're missing, And
Yeah.
like if you scroll over the missing ones, they kind of go, "Oh, this is the vague place where you might get it." So like it's a lot. I just want that for like everything. I just feel like it'd be so much easier for people to track what they want to do.
Yeah.
So kind of like an in-game wiki, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. I think like it's just more helpful. Like, so many games these days are like, oh, well, if you actually want to make some progress, you're gonna have to go look at this piece of information on a website. It's just like have this information in game.
Yeah.
So much easier.
If I can add another thing I want in World of Warcraft,
Greedy.
yeah, I know I am. I saw that Final Fantasy have a system where you can actually go a bit back, like a New Game Plus. I would love to see that in World of Warcraft as well, so you can like go back and see other major events, which haven't happened in the past, like just for story content or for YouTube or something. I saw that Final Fantasy 14 had that for some of the newest, a few of the newest expansions.
Yeah, the New Game Plus.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we should wrap up now because we're running out of time. So we'll start with Logix, as you would guess. And for a start, we'll thank you for having you. And we'll thank you for having you. We'll thank you for being here.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And is there anywhere that people can look you up for any content? Let people know what you're doing and where they can find you.
Honestly, I'm not doing much at the moment. I do have a Twitch channel, but it's inactive. It's mostly used for viewing, so there isn't really anything.
And Slandy, let people know what you're doing recently, because I know you've got Final Fantasy plans. So
yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of stuff on Twitch at the moment. I've been playing through some Final Fantasy and Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth as well, on Twitch, and I'm also on YouTube with some small VODs and other stuff for the future as well, which I'm still trying to plan out. But yeah, I will make sure that the descriptions of every one of us is actually being in the description in the YouTube as well. So.
And as always, you can catch me absolutely nowhere because I don't do anything recently. Probably not in the next month or so because I've got so much going on that I want to do personally that isn't really stream worthy because it's for my personal benefit more than it is for gaming and a lot. But I have plans probably in a couple of months or 3 months to actually give streaming a shot. So once that's happened, I'll obviously let them know in the podcast most recent to that. But that's something you can look forward to from me. Yeah, so on that note, say bye to YouTube, all of us.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye.
Bye, YouTube.